Hi everyone, good afternoon. I'm Cerin Mills and I'm the live events programmer for Arts Alive and Flicks in the Sticks. And we're really delighted to have been able to be a very small part of this project with Open Sky Theatre and be able to have pointed a number of our audiences online to the 5 MicroPlays, which is what we're going to be delving into a little bit more this afternoon. But perhaps as there's such a small group of us, everyone might like to introduce themselves. So Emily, would you like to say hi first?
Yeah, sure. I'm Emily White. I'm a playwright. I used to be an actor and I trained at RADA a long time ago now. And then it wasn't really going anywhere. So I decided to go to university and study theatre writing, directing and performance at York. And then realised I liked writing basically while I was doing that. And so I carried on doing it after I finished. I guess I've been a writer now for like 6 years, something like that, 5-6 years. And I've been on the Channel 4 screenwriting course and the BBC Writers' Room. And then last year I had my play Pavilion produced at Theatre Clwyd in Wales. And now I'm writing another play for them. I'm also writing a play for English touring theatre through the Nationwide Voices programme. Hopefully, cross fingers, just getting a TV idea into development as well with a company called Little Door in Cardiff.
How lovely and refreshing that you're busy in this current climate. That is such music to my ears. Sadia, would you like to introduce yourself to us?
I'm Saida Ahmed. I'm represented by Independent Talent Agency. I was a student at Chicken Shed, but now I'm an alumni staff and I'm an actress. Sometimes I write poetry and, I draw occasionally. I've been on BBC4, The Unexpected Expert, episode 4, but the actual thing is called Unprecedented. So, yeah, I've done things for the Globe and just different things like Little Miss Burden that I was nominated for Best Performer in a Play. So that was great. At the Bunker, which was obviously written by Matilda as well and directed by Debbie Hannon, which is very good because they're actually my friends now and I'm thankful for them very much.
Thank you. And we know you perform in one of the MicroPlays. Emily has written one of the MicroPlays and the director of all of the plays. I'd love him to introduce himself to you now.
I'm Lisle Turner. I am the Herefordshire connection in this arrangement. I run Open Sky Theatre with artistic director Claire Cochet, which is a theatre company based in Herefordshire. And I also run Rap Films, which is a feature film production company based in Herefordshire. And so I came up with the idea of MicroPlays about a year ago. This was the arrival of the pandemic, but we were interested in starting a project that spoke to people who were a little bit detached from theatre. And we had 3 particular groups of people in mind. That was young people, because there's a real drop-off in young people attending the theatre, 18 to 30-year-olds. That was people who lived out rurally. I now live very rurally myself, and I'm aware that it's quite difficult for some people to physically get to the theatre, and Arts Alive are fantastic in dealing with that. But this was for those who have become disconnected, we thought this was an interesting project to reconnect them. Hopefully they'll go to Arts Alive shows from this point forward. And then also for people who just feel that theatre is either, there's a barrier to them engaging with theatre because of costs, or just the theatre's not about them or not for them. So that was the kind of motivation behind coming up with the project. But for me, I've written for the theatre. I think I'm on my 7th or 8th play produced now. And I've also made an awful lot of films. I made a feature film in Herefordshire, Here and Now, but also that I've made TV and an awful lot of short films. And so as a project, for someone who has been in the industry a while and made, quite a nice living, I wanted to do something which wasn't so much about me. One of the interesting things that differs between theatre and film is that theatre is really, the writers have the primacy in theatres, and this was about working with some of the most exciting writers that we could find. We both saw and read Pavilion. So we were very keen to work with Emily because it's belly laugh good as a piece of social comedy, and work with new talent like Saida. I hadn't met Saida before. I did know Matilda, the writer of Saida's previous work, Little Miss Burden, and I love Matilda. She's a wonderful writer, very funny. But as soon as I spoke to Saida, I wanted to work with Saida.
I'd like to maybe take us back to when I saw the shared rehearsed readings of these pieces pre-COVID. And perhaps you could just talk us through the process from then. I think that would be very interesting.
You know, it's been a while that we've been developing it. Obviously, we were all set to go before the pandemic, and literally the shooting of the plays was cancelled 3 days before principal photography. So the process spread out a little bit, but it's been quite an interesting process, you know, from a kind of a production point of view, you know, speaking on behalf of the production company. The way that it kind of happened was that Martina, who's my business partner and producer in Wrapped Films, the film production company, we both talked about this, and we both talked about how we wanted to do something that reached people that were struggling to connect with theatre, and that we, you know, our film's expertise could help us do that. And also that we wanted to work with some exciting new talent. I think Martina particularly was very sick of the sound of my voice. So she wanted to work with some new people. So we went out quite broadly into the world of theatre, looking at which playwrights were doing interesting work at the moment and who might be interested in doing it. And we had quite a long list of initial interest that we spoke to. And then we narrowed that list down to Emily, to Kate Atwell, to Matilda Rabini, who wrote the piece that Saida was in, to Iman Qureshi, and to Tana Stivovic. Interesting, they were all female writers, not by design, just by talent. So it wasn't a concrete choice that we made there to work with female writers, but it was a nice surprise that they were all women and that they were all making great work, the best work that we could find. Martina worked with the writers to develop some script ideas. It's a different process to working on a film or a TV project. TV, the writers are treated with a little bit more respect, but in the film industry, it's terrible for treating its writers with disrespect. And so we were quite keen that the writers could have real freedom to choose what they wanted to write about, and then that the finished scripts would very much be the scripts that they conceived and wrote, and that I would only interfere with them a little bit before we shot them. And I hope that was Emily's experience of it. But once they were written, we did have some kind of rules that we said, look, they're plays, not films. So, you know, maximum of 3 actors, set in continuous time. We're not going to rely on special effects or fanciness like that. It's got to be words and actor driven. And we were delighted with the scripts because they're also different and also strong in their own right. They are plays in so fact as you could have put them on the stage and they perform as plays, you know, but you could also put them on location, which is cheaper than a stage or a set. And then you can film them on location and then work like that too. So, we did the rehearsed reading at the courtyard to a live audience, just so we could hear the words out loud, and so the writers could hear the words out loud. Got very nice feedback then, so we were very happy to take the project forward. And then, as I say, it was nearly derailed by COVID. We got 3 days from principal photography, which is a lot of organisation to get that set up. To do 5 in a row, 1 each day, back to back. You know, that's a lot of people and transport and logistics and booking and that kind of thing. So we were entirely set up, and then unfortunately we had to cancel for safety reasons. But then people were amazing. And so never in the last 30 years of my career have I had a project where people came together to help us out so much to get it back on. We got all of our money back from all of the suppliers, or even from the rails company, from the hotels, you know, and the Arts Council gave us more money to redo the work that we inevitably had to redo. So, you know, we just, the Elmley Foundation, our other financial partners were great. All the local NPOs, yourselves included, have been incredibly supportive, and the courtyard as well, and rural media. So, you know, everyone just said, come on, let's get it done. Everyone wants to go back to work, you know, as soon as possible. And that was generally the spirit that they got done in. But everybody just got on with it. And that was amazing.
Thank you for that context.
Yeah.
Emily, could I come to you first and just ask, I mean, obviously, you the wordsmith, you created it, it's a play. How do you feel about it now? It's a film.
Yeah, I was really, really happy with it. It was such a shame that I couldn't be on set and see it. I'd worked with Victoria and Caitlin before because they were both in Pavilion. But Kyle, I hadn't. I'd seen him in a reading and said, get him in for an audition. But I wasn't at the auditions either. So it was a little bit nerve-wracking because he was my lead. but I thought he did a really good job. And I was really happy with, what Lisle did with it as well. I mean, it was, giving the horror kind of movie genre kind of added a lot to the script, because I just wrote it as I would a play, all of the way that it was set up, and the dark lighting and the television and, all that stuff Lisle came up with, and I thought it just added to it. Yeah, it just would have been completely different if it was something that was just on stage.
I was grinning as I said that bit about not interfering with the scripts too much before filming, because Emily, with great tolerance, was the person whose script I interfered with most. So I was kind of slightly biting my tongue as I made that claim. But Emily was very good-humoured about it. And also, what was really interesting for me, there's a certain humility that you learn in the collaborations when they're done differently. And in film, you can very easily become a bit of a dictator as a director, because everybody just agrees with you and does what you say. And all of these 5 writers were all very, they would tell me when I was making a wrong turn about something. And I remember Emily saying, I had this question about the last line in Homework, which was, I can't do the accent. So it was, pass me the glue, would you?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, film, you cut any extraneous words. We don't need would you, do you? And Emily was like, actually, Lisle, I think you'll find that when it's said by a Welsh person in a genuine Welsh accent, then it makes perfect sense. And of course, Emily was absolutely right. So that's been really good. It was a really good reminder to me that it works like that in the theatre for a reason. And I think the film industry's taken a step away from that a little bit, and not necessarily wisely.
You got some quality actors, didn't you, Lisle? There's no doubt about that.
Well, again, something we took the lead from as Emily said, she cast 2 of the 3 actors in from her previous work in Homework, and also gave us a short list of other people to see for the lead. So we very much followed her lead there. And then in Saida's play, Head Over Wheels, I didn't get to see Little Miss Burden, but Martina went to see it. And you've got to talk to Saida, who was the lead. And then I think did we FaceTime?
Yeah,
we FaceTime. Yeah, we
Yeah.
Zoomed, yeah. And it was an instant meeting of minds. I was very keen that she was the lead.
Saida, can we come to you now just for a moment then? I mean, again, I didn't not like any of the 5, but I did particularly enjoy, and I'm not just saying this because Emily and Saida are in the room, but I did particularly enjoy Homework, and I did particularly enjoy Head Over Wheels. The dynamic between you and Michelle is beautifully portrayed. Obviously, partly that's the writing, but it's also your skill as a performer. Did you enjoy this exercise, this process, this project?
Mate, I loved it. I loved every bit of it. And it's like the 2 characters, you can tell, they've had this relationship from the beginning, but it just took a little bit of a push at the end. And I just think it's such a funny, story full of not so much, I wouldn't say it's romantic, but you could tell there's romance in there, and it has the potential to go far. And I just love working with Michelle. And you don't really get to see as much disabled performers in romantic comedies like that. So when I had this opportunity to do it, I sat down with my mum. I said, Mum, this is going to be great. I could tell this is really going to hit the roof, and I would really appreciate if you support me within this process. And she just took it on board. She was absolutely lovely. And she even said that it's one of her favourites. Of course, Little Miss Burden is up there, but they're, equally as great. And I just think Lisle is a fantastic director. The whole crew made us feel so welcome. So it just made our jobs a bit easier.
That's really nice to hear. I mean, I'm hearing really strongly that sense of collective endeavour, and almost, that kind of, we are in this pandemic, but we're not bloody going to let it get us down. Here we go. And it's wonderful, that kind of almost warlike mentality, isn't it? But that clearly has created such a quality product, because you've all been so passionate about what you're doing.
One of the things that we were hoping for all of the plays was that you can't replace live theatre. Live theatre is a very special thing. You know, you sit in the room, you feel the energy, you get it from the words, you get it from the actors. You know, you can't replace that. But what we were trying to do with these was not replace it, but try and capture some of it, and only use film devices when we needed to just finish the play, as it were. So it really was let the words stand on their own, let the performances stand on their own, let those be the focus, and only do any camera jiggery-pokery when we really needed to add a bit of something that you were losing because you couldn't be in the space. So it was about trying to, you know, it's a hybrid form, digital theatre, you know, so it's about trying to be as honest and committed to the source material as you can, whilst allowing yourself to let it not suffer for the lack of a live venue. And so you do have to do some work. You know, you can't just let it be it. People have been doing it. They just put the camera down and let the action play out in front of it, and then you get a poor version of a stage play. You know, I think what you have to do is keep as much of the theatrical intent as possible, but then use enough filming devices to make the two things fit together and work on the screen. So that was one of the key challenges. You can't do anything without the writing and the performances. If the writing and the performances were off in any of them, it wouldn't work. You know, it's easy for directors to take credit for stuff, but we filmed these in half the time you would film if they were film. So if the words were bad, there's no time to cover them up. Or if the performances weren't right, there's no time to spend hours getting them right. You know, so we really were in the hands of the writers and the actors. You know, Saida was talking about working with Michelle there. Michelle Tiwo, wonderful actor. They both worked on Little Miss Burden, so they came with complicity. You know, they came with a willingness to just get on together and do the performance together and play off each other rather than like just doing their lines and trying to look good, which often you get with film actors. And without that, you'd have got something very different.
I think that's what stands these apart, actually, that, you know, you have absolutely achieved your intention to film a play, but it is much more of a play than a film. For me in particular, the ceremony one, I mean, I think I emailed you, Lisle, the minute I'd watched it and said I was weeping. And I actually was. I was really, you know, I've been through 2 separations. So it kind of touched a nerve because it was so beautifully done. But the camera work in that in particular, because you're largely just looking at those 2 very strong,
very effective faces. That was, wasn't it? Yeah.
Unbelievably powerful. Yeah.
It's funny. So that camera device is, I don't know if any of you heard of Sean Bobbitt, who's the cinematographer who shoots all the Steve McQueen's films, 12 Years a Slave and Hunger and Shame and those films. Oscar-winning cinematographer. And I was lucky enough to work with him on a short film. And he said this to me, he'd just been filming Hunger with Steve McQueen and filmed this incredible sequence where a character was dying of starvation, Bobby Sands in the Maze prison in Belfast. And he said, look, to get into his space, what I did was we would rest the camera on his belly as he was holding it, and then he would breathe at the same rate that the character was breathing. And just as he did that, so as the character breathed in, you go in. As the character breathes out, you go out. And so we did that on the ceremony so that you would really feel like as the character was coming forward emotionally, you would just go in a little bit, and Ahmed, the cinematographer, just drifting in and out a little bit like that. And it just makes you feel like they're talking to you. And the other, you know, so it's an organic thing. It's not really a camera trick per se. It's just making it feel a bit like live performance, a bit more organic, a bit more human. What's really strong about these is that, you know, some people love the ceremony. Some people love Head Over Wheels. Some people love Homework. So what we really wanted to do was with the 5, why we did a sequence, you know, why we did a series rather than just one, was to try and create something that you could really reach a diverse set of audience members as well. It surprises me that people who I think might like one, they actually like another. So my sister's favorite is Homework, you know, because she's a teacher and she's like, oh my God, this is my life. You know, when she watched Homework. So that just made her, and she also said, I'm sick of being miserable. The ceremony was beautiful, but I don't want to cry at the moment. I want someone to cheer me up. You know, so and then there's some great comments about Head Over Wheels being made online by people who just love it. I've seen several calls for it to be turned into a TV show. So you've got people who really love that one, and other people have talked to me about the importance of being honest. Taina's play, and in all of the magic figures that you see online, where it tells you who's watching what, different groups of audiences are buying into different plays, and that's really interesting, because online anyone can choose. They can choose to turn it on, they can choose to turn it off. So it's an honest opinion online. They don't have to watch it if they don't want to. So it's not like the theatre that once you got them in, they're yours until the curtain goes. But so no, it's been very interesting on that front.
I think there's something very good about the fact that they are so brief. I mean, I know that obviously they're micro plays, but actually, because they are so brief, you can choose to watch them again and again. But actually, it doesn't take you very long at all to delve right in there. And I think certainly for the younger generation, whose attention span seems to be slightly less than mine, for example, I generalize, but these are great pieces. In half an hour they can have watched 5, and I'm really hoping that it will get much more universal watching, the full 5 pieces. We must try and make that happen.
And Emily, is to ask you as a writer, sorry to hijack Karen, but
no, go for it.
How Pavilion, you write quite expansively, and your style is really nice, and kind of you like to cover lots of different story angles, and Pavilion particularly, there's lots of subplots and going on and that kind of. So how was it for you to go down to yours? I can't remember what your duration is now. I think it's under 5 yours, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like 3 minutes.
Yeah. How did that feel for you? Did that feel finished?
Yeah, to me, I mean, whenever I write something, I go, okay, I'm going to write a play about this subject matter. Then I try and find a way to do it with as few actors as possible. So, because, it's much more likely to go on if you can write a show that will fit in a studio space. But my ideas always go, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. and then, before I know it, I've got 14 actors and all song and dance numbers and everything.
And a revolve on stage.
When you came to me saying cultural polarization was the theme, I remembered that I had this scene that I'd written and put in a drawer like a year or two before that, where I'd been on a writing workshop, and we'd been talking about, I guess, like, the biggest issues facing us at that point in time, and people were talking about Me Too and Brexit and I said climate change, and then we had a kind of talk about how that's not written about that often in theatre because it's such a difficult subject to cover in theatre, because it's hard to make it entertaining. You end up kind of just bashing the audience over with the head with facts and science, and so I just kind of was like, I wonder if I can make it entertaining, and I went away and I wrote that scene. Kind of as soon as I thought of it being a kid who doesn't want to do his homework. And of course, this was before the school strikes, before Greta Thunberg, before Extinction Rebellion. None of that had happened yet. So it's kind of a little bit of a premonition, really. But, but as soon as I came up with the idea for a kid who doesn't want to do his homework, it just wrote itself, really.
Speaking as, with a slight kind of producer head on, that's great stuff, that you can, when you can make stuff about a serious subject, and both Homework and Head Over Wheels are funny. Their principal kind of appeal is that they're funny, and but they're both talking about serious subjects, and that's really important, that you can find a way of making stuff accessible, because you don't just want to hit people over the head with it. That's not what art's about. It's about creating empathy and making a connection and all that kind of stuff. And it was, it's funny, I think your style really suits short form. It was interesting that, having only seen Pavilion as context, which is a big old piece of writing, the short form really works for you. And it really felt like good TV writing as well to me. It felt like it would be something that would sit well on a screen permanently. And that was one of the ideas behind another of the ideas behind the project, that we would try and, make something that served the writer's purpose in terms of, you know, making more screen material if they wanted to do that. And also with actors like Saida, who we thought was so talented that they deserve to be seen. You know, they deserve to be seen by a broader audience, and that's extraordinary, the comparison. You know, you have a hit with a play, you know, and a few thousand people see it, or however many, and one of the plays, 17,000 people watched it in 2 hours. You know, and that's a lot of people. You know, and that's a lot of people to see a performance, and so that's really interesting. I think just as someone who has been around for a while, it's interesting to see how the industry's changing, and are we all gonna, you know, how are we all gonna go with it? And COVID's brought that in a sharp relief. You know, it's like, what are we going to do with the theatre to make sure theatre survives, continues to thrive, and continues to get out to audiences who aren't just a central London, you know, hardcore dedicated theatre going audience, you know, and it's important that. Now, otherwise I'll be out of a job. You know, we'll all be out, we three will all be out of jobs. You know what I mean? So we've got to think about that.
So where next then? Where are these pieces going? What's your plan?
We're a little surprised about how many people are watching them. We thought it was going to take a little while longer to build the audience base, but we just want as many people to watch them as possible. You know, we had a whole live distribution planned with yourselves as well, where we were going to show them before Flicks in the Stick screening. You know, people, various different organisations are going to show them before features, but everywhere's closed down now. So the kind of time and the effort that we were going to put into that live distribution, we're now putting into online distribution, and we'll keep pushing until we run out of energy and money and all the rest of the things that we need to do to get them watched. But if we've done this many views, you know, 55,000 in 4 days or whatever, you know, I'd expect us to double or triple that easily. You know, I hope that Head Over Wheels is a good showreel piece for Saida, so she gets lots more work. And I hope, I mean, Emily doesn't need any help from us. She's already on the right path, but you never know. Hopefully Homework's a little trailer for Emily White brilliance, you know. So yeah, that's what I hope happens next. I hope that lots of people watch them and everybody who was involved gets something out of it. You know,
absolutely. Well, that's inevitable, I'm sure. That's an epic amount of people in 3 days, isn't it? So fantastic. I want to thank you for joining us, and keep safe and well.